...2004 could easily be considered one of the landmark years in video games. This was the year we saw the launch of the original Nintendo DS, as well as the PSP in Japan. We saw Counter-Strike move to the Source engine, to say nothing of the now legendary Half-Life 2. Doom 3 launched, showing a survival horror take on the franchise with a still very impressive lighting engine. And of course one of my favorites, Halo 2 launched to maintain its place as king of first-person shooters and changed online gaming on consoles forever. Among these titans of gaming during the 6th generation, games were easily lost in the crowd, doomed to obscurity. Before November of 2004, it would have been laughable to think that a game with a 007 license, with the Goldeneye name no less, would be in the latter group. But very few people seem to talk about this game anymore. Searching for this game online doesn't yield very many recent results, just the occasional long play or retrospective review from mid-level channels. While I can't even include myself in this league, I still feel that game deserved a second look. Goldeneye Rogue Agent released on November 22nd, 2004 on GameCube, PlayStation 2, and Xbox, with a later release on the DS in June the following year. I suspect this was the start of EA's bad habit of releasing games way too close to the competition who they don't share a weight class with, as this was only 2 weeks after Halo 2 would launch and a mere week after Half-Life 2. This habit actually turned on the company itself later in 2016 when EA released Titanfall 2 just a week after Battlefield 1. A game with far more brand recognition and mass appeal despite being an inferior game. Titanfall 2 at least had a fighting chance, being a great game with a strong single-player campaign that took many people by surprise considering it followed Titanfall 1, which suffered due to the campaign being poorly baked into a multiplayer component that lost the player base very quickly. But Goldeneye had the opposite problem. At this point, the 007 games were very solid shooters, with the previous Goldeneye and Nintendo 64 being the standard in console FPS until Halo would come along. The one I had played the most is probably Agent Under Fire, which was the first Bond game that generation. It more or less followed the auto-aim formula of Nintendo 64's Goldeneye, with slightly better auto-lock and obviously far better available controllers. These games were more than just shooting galleries, however. Given that they were making games based on movies about espionage, they tried to add goals to each level in the form of objectives, as well as adding multiple approaches despite being linear games. They also give you a variety of gadgets to use in each level, often reusing some while occasionally having unique items like key cards. This added variety helped create the illusion of being a badass spy like James Bond, as well as provide tools for more unique ways of getting around the level. Goldeneye doesn't do this. The objective is always go forward and shoot guys or stand around and shoot guys until the level ends, which sometimes takes far too long. At the start of the third mission of the game, the setup is that you need to assassinate Dr. No from a building across from his, which sounds like a stealth sniper mission in the vein of All Ghillied Up from Modern Warfare, right? Not even close. You step off the elevator and immediately fight through goons. Worse still, when you get to the sniper rifle, the case is empty and your triad contact betrays you, leading you to have to abort the mission moments after you started and try to escape. Except this just leads to the Trail of Tears Rooftop Edition, as you have to zipline rooftop to rooftop to rooftop to rooftop, because Pussy Galore is too nervous to land her helicopter until she just suddenly isn't. As far as gadgets, the closest you get is your Goldeneye abilities, which are closer to superpowers than they are to gadgets. The 4 powers are MRI imaging, which lets you see through walls, EM hack to remotely activate traps or disable weapons, magnetic polarity shield, which is just straight up God mode, and magnetic induction field, which lets you yeet goons. You'll be forgiven if you forget you have these abilities, since for 95% of the game, you don't actually need them to progress. Something like the laser was used in previous games to get through locked areas or to find secrets. From what I can find online, Goldeneye only has 1 secret, and cheat codes don't count. There's a hidden golden gun on on Hong Kong. It's pretty much right at the start, and all you have to do is go the wrong way after killing everyone following the triad betrayal. There's a cow in a boat. humor. As far as the ability's actual uses, they tend to be pretty situational outside of the shield, which has obvious uses. The MRI has a pretty short range, and the AI doesn't really tend to hide. Most of the times when it comes in handy is literally when the game puts you in situations where you need to use it. Whenever this happens, you can be sure there's a handy railgun sitting around for you to shoot people with wall hacks. EM hack has a similar range issue. Most of the time it's just easier to push the button yourself with how bad the controls are.
Except the times when you can't.
Remember that 5% of the time I said you'll use your abilities? No? Oh, well, okay, this isn't live, you can just go back and listen again. I'm not going anywhere. So, the game is such a void of puzzle solving that at one point I actually got stuck in the octopus level because the solution involved using the EM hack on buttons, which, as I said, I never do. As for the other hack's feature, it just straight up doesn't work. I don't know, maybe I'm doing something wrong, but every time I try to disable someone's weapon, they just shoot me anyways. So it's just a way to throw away your energy meter in a fire if you feel like you have too much and need a way to screw up your aim again. Magnetic induction field is... I mean, let's face it, it's just force push from Star Wars. The only time I can ever recall actually using it is when I'd throw my siblings off the Golden Gate Bridge in split-screen deathmatch just to make them mad. I'm not sure it's worth it. And the shield is a shield. What, you want in-depth analysis? It's a fucking shield. Tank goes boom and you go nah. End segment. During my research, I didn't find much on this game's development. In fact, the development section of the Wikipedia page was only marginally larger than the opening of this very video. The game was built on the Medal of Honor engine. Unlike previous games which used id Tech 3 and iterated on it with each game, they brought in Ken Adams, who did production design for the films throughout the 60s and 70s, to do production design for this game. They even managed to get Judi Dench and Christopher Lee to reprise the roles, even though I feel like Scaramanga was kind of tragically misused as an evil version of Q. The game was pitched as an alternate universe that looked more at the dark side of the 007 world, which on paper is an absolutely great premise. The ad they showed on TV when I was a kid absolutely sold me on this concept, with the way it starts off in a classic Bond way with the theme song and the moving dots for the music to just dead stop as a live-action Goldeneye drags his sidearm across a car and blows shit up without even looking, and then saying it's good to be bad in Bond's world. What spy-obsessed 9-year-old wouldn't be into that? But that ad turned out to be one of the more memorable parts of that game for me. I soon realized, as others had long before me, that EA just wanted to cash in on the success of the previous Goldeneye game without any consideration for the license, or the fact that the Goldeneye wasn't a literal eye, but instead a Soviet EMP weapon that was deployed in space. Supposedly there was a sequel plan, but obviously the poor sales didn't justify that. Not that it would matter much considering how many iconic characters are killed in this game. And yeah, I didn't really find much else. A pretty easy conclusion to draw would be the fact that they tried to release 2 007 games in the same year, and seeing how this one is a completely new concept built on a different engine, it's easy to see why Everything or Nothing is so much better. I'd mentioned before that the previous Bond games used a variation of the Goldeneye aiming system, with Everything or Nothing using a hard lock-on button. Being a first-person shooter in 2004, you'd expect this game to use the Halo auto-aim system. But by now you know expectations are pretty pointless with this game. The game uses 2 aiming systems. The aimbot auto-aim that has trouble distinguishing between targets and a static crosshair. If you're using the crosshair like my dumbass 9-year-old self was, you're in for a terrible time. The Halo Reach reticle bloom can hold my beer. The crosshair goes absurdly wide and just takes too long to zero in again. Especially on the longer range 2-handed commando rifle, which you would expect to be the most accurate weapon outside of the sniper rifle, but I think you'd be better off using the Jackal pistol as the DMR. The only way to make this game feasibly playable is by using the auto aim, but you feel like you're hardly aiming anymore, just looking in the general direction of enemies. Reserve ammo is absurdly low too. Too many weapons can only carry 1 extra reload, and sometimes even then, it seems to bug out when you have 2 Mamba 12-gauge shotguns, which weirdly gives you more ammo. The HS-90 is likely going to be your go-to firearm, as it is able to be dual-wielded, and is very spray and pray friendly. but even this weapon only carries 2 extra reloads and is not expanded by carrying 2 of them. So you're really only good for about half a firefight. Some weapons are either situational or almost completely useless. The sniper rifle appears rarely throughout the game and is usually in very particular spots where you're expected to use it. The Venom 200 ml is completely pointless. Its only purpose is to stun enemies, but it has a slow rate of fire and very few shots. You're far better off just shooting with a standard weapon. The Predator MG is a minigun, and I actually don't think I have anything bad to say about it. I usually prefer this weapon when I can find it. One of the most pointless weapons that I wouldn't actually call useless is the Tesla EM, which shows up in the later levels of the game. For the longest time, it seemed to just be a fancy pistol and I didn't know what the point of it was. It wasn't until I looked it up that I learned it's actually supposed to drain the polarity shield. Considering how few enemies in the game actually have this ability, it's basically worthless. Especially because you literally can't store any guns outside of your backup sidearm, which you always have and never runs out of ammo. This thing is basically a pea shooter, avoid using it at all costs. And actually that bit about not being able to pocket any of the guns really kills this game for me. When I play a game like Halo and I come across a rocket launcher or a sniper rifle, I usually want to keep that as a secondary in case I may need it later, which gives me agency as a player and I can use the game sandbox with my own creativity and approach. Goldeneye is the absolute antithesis of this idea. If I want to take the rocket launcher with me, I will be limited to poking everybody if I want to save it. Because did I mention you can only use grenades with one-handed weapons? Not that you will have any motivation to do this because the game also provides a conveniently placed weapon for these situations. In fact, I'm pretty sure the rocket launchers on Hoover Dam respawn because the game would be impossible if you ran out of rockets. Which you certainly will because the auto aim can't hit the broadside of a planet. This game will flat out refuse to be played in your way. You have to play by its rules. Which is ironic considering this game was intended to have you be playing as the bad guy who pours gasoline on those rules and flicks the match. Every moment you spend playing it is just a chore, to the point where I gave up trying to beat it because I couldn't summon the willpower to do just one more recording session. To say nothing of this game's anemic checkpoint system. The only thing this game has to offer from a gameplay perspective is the dual wielding system, which wasn't even unique when it came out. Most weapons support this system, which is one of the few pluses I'll begrudgingly give this game. Not that it matters, because as I said, you'll probably be using the Wombo Combo garden hoses. Unfortunately, I won't be able to cover the multiplayer in the detail I'd prefer. OG Xbox Live servers are long dead. Not that it matters, because EA killed the Goldeneye servers in 2006 due to inactivity, and due to it's not a simple matter to get people over to play split screen, so I'm stuck with 15-year-old memories. A lot of the maps are actually pretty neat, featuring locations from a variety of different Bond movies. There's a lot here for super fans of the franchise, even if you just want to look around by yourself. My childhood favorite maps are probably Scaramanga's Funhouse, Moonraker Fuel, and Golden Gate Bridge. These maps feature traps just like in the campaign, which I find far more interesting as they often feel like a part of the map instead of just randomly throughout the level. However, they are really obvious, especially if you've seen the movies, and they'll often be in their own part of the map, so it's really easy to just not go there. This turns levels like Moonraker Launch from being a circle with a middle bit to just a circle. All the complaints on the last section about the guns still apply here. However, because every player is fighting with the aim controls, you benefit from the mutual suffering of both having trouble hitting each other. However, one hit with a golden gun, rocket launcher, or the Omen can really make a huge difference. I also recall occasionally trying to make up my own games on these maps, such as playing chicken on the Golden Gate Bridge, trying to kill the helicopters a team on Uplink, or basically our own version of Juggernaut and Funhouse, where you can only kill whoever has the golden gun. Some maps I've never actually played. A few of them required progress in the game to unlock, and one was actually an online-only map called Temple. I can't even find an image of it online, and I doubt anyone has data mined this game. I definitely don't know how to do that. All in all, it's a fun game among friends, but the same could be said about taking turns kicking each other in the dick. It's really a shame that this game wasn't better, as it ended up being the turning point when 007 games died off for me. The EA era ended the following year after the release of From Russia with Love. By the time Activision had the rights, I had already moved on. They made a remake of the 1997 Goldeneye for the Wii. If I hadn't been disappointed by the last Goldeneye, I might have gladly gotten this. Though, honestly, it looks a bit like a Call of Duty reskin. They also made 007 Legends. That happened, I guess. And then they promptly removed their games from digital stores because of course they did. That's kinda been it for Bond games since 2013. It's incredible when you consider the fact that the James Bond franchise is among the top 10 highest grossing movie franchises. The other top 10s like Batman, Marvel, and Star Wars are all still getting games. The best game content that 007 got since his downfall, in my opinion, was in the form of a source mod of the original Goldeneye, and it's multiplayer only. I'm sure about 2 of you are wondering if I'm going to mention the DS version of this game outside of the release date, but there isn't much to say about it. It's the same game with less levels, worse visuals and frame rate, brain-dead stupid AI that stands in place, less levels, and a somehow worse weapon system. You don't actually pick up ammo when you walk over a gun. You have to tap the corresponding gun icon on the touchscreen to pick it up, which is probably where I got my habit of reloading by picking up a fresh gun in the full game. Probably the most notable thing about this version of the game is that the engine was actually used to make a DS version of Halo, which had a fully playable demo. So there's one last Halo parallel for you. Hopefully we can see a full new game in the future with modern graphics and possibly even taking advantage of VR. A bit like I Expect You to Die, but less parody and more serious? Who knows, maybe they'll even get it right this time.